I'm life and business coach Samantha Sifring, and this is the Online Business Building Mamas podcast, where you learn how to build a wildly successful business from home while raising kids. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I have my incredible client, Gretta, on with me today. She is a time management coach, and she's also in my mastermind. And we are going to be talking about being successful in a group program. So she is a client of Mama to CEO and Simple Scaling Mastermind. She's had incredible results with both, and she has shared with me recently some of the mental shifts that have really allowed her to figure out how she gets results in a group, how she's successful in this kind of container. So we're going to talk about that and give you all some really good tips for how to do that yourself. So welcome, Gretta. Tell us a little about you and who you help.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. So I help women with time management.
Tell me a little bit about where you were when you first joined Mama to CEO, why you did that. Give us like that before picture.
Yeah, so I think I had found you. I don't even remember when it was. I think it was last summer, and I just kind of stalked your stuff. I don't know, it just like wasn't completely on my radar, your program. And then in December, when you offered Design 2021, I joined that. I showed up, I think all but one day live, and I was like, this is amazing. She explains things in a way that my brain understands, and like concepts that I had maybe heard, like, I don't know, similar before, but like it just didn't click. And then when you explained things, it was like, oh, I finally get it now. And so I planned out my whole 2021, and the math actually kind of made sense. But I was also just in a really kind of crappy spot mentally. I felt like I'd been working really, really hard and investing a lot of money. And I had, I think at the time, like 5 clients, and someone had just quit. Like I was not in a great mental space, but I was like, maybe like this is what I need. She explains things in a way that I didn't understand before. This is for sure what I need. And so at the end of 2020 is when I signed up for Mama to CEO. And that very next month, I had my highest revenue ever.
I love it. Okay. So I feel like I have a lot of people who have invested a lot before they find me, and then they find me and they're like, oh yeah, I like the sound of that, but I've also invested a lot. So what was that like thought for you that made it okay to invest more?
It was just that she explains things like if I'm actually understanding it and I'm going to actually implement it, like I have to have this. Like there was just so many things that you said that made sense to me. And I feel like if it resonates, that's the best sign to go by. Because when I look back on my past purchases, so many of them were made from lack. And like I was missing something and I needed to have this because there was something wrong with me, or like kind of that mentality. And I don't know, I'm in this for life, and I'm in terms of like building my business, and I'm just determined to do whatever it takes and find whatever resources to get me to that place. And I guess just so what? Like, I mean, I'm not where I want to be. I'm going to keep going. Like, it's just
love that.
Not a negotiable for me.
I love that. Like I'm in this for life. So I'm just going to continue to take the next step that feels like the right one. And like, eventually I'll get there.
Yes.
I think if everyone had that thought, like only that thought, they would all have inevitable success at some point. Like that, I think that idea that eventually I'm going to get there if I just keep going, it's so powerful and it's so true. And that's what leads you there. Like the only reason you don't succeed eventually is if you stop taking steps forward.
Yeah.
So
and
good.
It was just such an incredible shift. Like I had so many shifts that entire week. I was like, I have to work with you.
I
like,
love it.
Done. Take my money.
Take my money. I just did another episode with 3 people from Mama to CEO, and they were all part of Design 21 as well. and had similar shifts. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing I offer. Design 21. Design 22 is going to be a thing. It's coming early December. So there'll be a whole new batch of people hearing your story.
And I'm excited for them too. Like that was just such a huge, that week was just such a huge shift for me. And like, it was the first time that I really felt possibility in my business. Like it felt inevitable. It felt like I could see the roadmap. And after like, it sounds so dramatic, but like after struggling for so long, like it was only 8 months. Like the facts are, it was 8 months. But like, I do think when you're building a business, like that struggle is real. Like the emotional, like, I don't know if you experience it in a lot. There's not a lot of other things in our lives that I think bring up that emotional and mental turmoil. Like it sounds very like dark and dramatic, but like it is what
it feels like that. I totally agree. I always tell the story of like some days I would be so excited and would be like, Stuart, I created this whole website and this whole worksheet and all this stuff. And then like the next day I'd be like depressed, like no one clicked on it or whatever. And it was this intense emotional up and down on a daily basis at the beginning of my business. And I feel like Design 21 and Mom It Is CEO are really what I wish I had at that time period to just see like, oh, okay, this is possible for me. I can see that. I know what to do to make it happen. I know what I'm doing that's not working because like at that time I had no idea. I was like trying to be Amy Porterfield or something. And that was not at all what I needed to do to get a client.
Yes. I wish I had you. Like I was in a full-time job. It really, in starting like 2014 is when I realized I was like, this is just not for me. I had tried like a bunch of different, I was an occupational therapist. And so I tried to like a bunch of different settings, like thinking I was just in the wrong setting. And after like 4 or 5 different settings with different populations, it's like, maybe it's not this setting that's not working for me. And I remember just feeling so lost and frustrated. It's like, I want to do something else. I want to have my own business, but I don't have a clue where to start. I don't know what that is. And it was, like 6 years of struggling on my own. And I just like, I wish I had you back then. Like, and I feel like that's just so great for the person who's just starting out. But I think you're also amazing for the person who's been struggling on their own for a couple of years in their business, just not making the money they want to make. I just feel like you cover both of those things, like especially in Mom and the CEO. That's just such a great place to be.
Yeah. So you joined, you had your highest month ever. So what was that number?
5,000. I could pull up the spreadsheet. It was like 5,800.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I know it was over 5K. And what had you made before?
I was hitting between 2 and 4K. Like, and then also, I mean, I had plenty of $0 months too.
Yes.
Let's be serious. Yeah. But yeah, it was
So
between,
good.
0 and 4K, which is very up and down, not predictable.
What was the biggest shift for you joining? Like, what were kind of those lessons learned that really helped you create that?
I felt like with you, and I think it's just like your energy and who you are, I just felt very welcomed and very supported and very loved. And I feel like that point where I was in my business, I needed that like energy and that warmth because I just wasn't experiencing that before. So I feel like it made it safe for me to keep going. And then also the way you explain things is just so understandable and actionable. And I think I was thinking, like, this is it. This is what was missing for me. This is the coach for me. I think just kind of like a combination of those things really was like the big shift for me.
I love it. So then you joined the mastermind. What made you decide to do that?
Best decision ever. Okay. 2 things. One thing you said, like, I think it's just so funny when we think about selling, we think it's like this like really complicated thing and you have to say all the right words. You literally said 2 different sentences to me at 2 different times. And that's what sold me. So the first was you coached me in Mama to CEO and you said, think about where you're going to be in May. And like, so I feel like that planted the seed. And then in one of your emails you sent during the launch, you said, I don't even remember what you said, but I remember catching myself having the thought, but I'm not ready for that yet. And I was like, wait, that's like, why am I telling myself that? No, that's a bunch of crap. And so then I just went ahead and applied. I was like, she can decide if I'm ready for this room. And then when I got accepted, I was like, oh my gosh. I like freaked out because I have invested so much. And then there was like drama about creating the money around it, but best decision ever.
I really like this because I think a lot of people come into Mama to CEO and then feel hesitant about taking the next step and like want to wait. Like I've had people who have waited like a round or two before they've wanted to join. And I love that you just jumped at that first opportunity. I think that that is kind of rare. And I think part of it is like a self concept of like, I'm worthy of that. Where do you
Yeah,
think that came from?
that's a good question. I guess I think it's back to that like inevitability. Like, this is the next step. Like, this is the next step for me. This is the room I want to be in. Oh, and I remember now because I put that on my application. I was like, I'm willing to be the smallest fish in this pond because I want to surround myself with people that are where I want to be. And I want to be in that room where people are doing the things that I want to be doing, even if I'm not there yet. And I remember feeling a little embarrassed, like going into the mastermind. I actually had one less client than when I applied back in February. I was like, okay, it's fine. It is what it is. Like, I can feel embarrassed and I can still be here. And I think I was also thinking that day, I was like, okay, maybe like half of the first day will apply to me. And then maybe like the rest just kind of won't yet, but that's okay too. And like, both days totally applied to me and I didn't feel that way at all. But yeah, I do just think it's like this sense of inevitability. This is my next step. This is the room I want to be in, and putting myself in a place where I'm not quote unquote like there yet, but like that's the point.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be uncomfortable. I want to be the small fish.
I love that attitude. And I think that there's so much to be gained from being the small fish in that higher level room, like around those higher level conversations. I think you grow so much faster than the other way around. I think that it just exposes you to more of what's possible, and it like normalizes a new level of income, a new level of showing up, and you just like rise up to that. You're like, this is the culture that I'm in now. I'm just going to fit into that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that's been, I mean, that's been 100% my experience. Is it's just like, this is the room where it's normal to have 20K months. And I don't think,
Totally.
and I don't even have to really manage my mind around like, and I'm wrong for not having a 20K month. Like, that just doesn't come up for me. I know I have to manage my mind around plenty. That's just not one of the things that ever comes up for me. Like, I will get there for sure. I have no doubt. But
Yeah.
it just is normal to be in this room and see people make 20K, 50K, 70K months. Like, that's just normal. And I think that's just so cool. Because it actually, like, even reflecting, like, there are times when I think about my goal, I'm like, oh, people make 70K. Like, my goal this month was 24. I'm like, when I'm looking at it from that perspective, that's not really that much. And I think that's just amazing that my brain can normalize that amount of money, because I don't think that's like a reasonable amount of money out in the real world outside of this
Yeah.
room. And I think that's such a gift just to let that just soak into your brain, because it
Yeah.
does change your perspective on money.
I remember last year, there was a month last year where I was like halfway through the month and I was at like 27K or something like that. And I remember talking to my sister and being like down in the dumps, like, oh, only 27K this month. And she was just like, what's wrong with you? Some people make that in a year. It was the best like reminder that we really are kind of in this culture, in the mastermind, in this online entrepreneur space that is kind of detached from what's normal. And I think it's really good to have both. I think it's good to have the space where you're like, oh, a 70K month is something that people do. So I can totally do my goal. And then also to remember, like, oh, my neighbor makes 70K in a year. Like, that's like a normal annual salary. Like, I think it's good to balance those two to really find the sufficiency and gratitude and the normalization of growth.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I keep coming back to that too, because in my first, I might be jumping ahead, but like in my first 2 months in the mastermind, I hit 10K months and I'd never done that before. And then even though this month I'm at around 4K, like if I average that out, that's still significantly more than I was making in my 9 to 5. And how incredible is that? Like, I just think that's amazing.
Yeah. And 24K in a little under
Yes.
months is so incredible. And that's 100K a year if you add it
Yes.
up times four.
Yes. And it's more than I made all of last year. So that's pretty amazing. And that like just think like sit in the amazingness of that I in the last 3 months, I made more than I made all of last year. It's just fantastic.
It really is. That's so fun to like have those realizations and see. I also love how you said that you aren't triggered by like other people doing 20K months and that kind of thing because you know it's inevitable that you will. I really think when we get triggered by other people's success, it's coming from a belief that we can't do it. And I love that you said that. And I wanted to just like highlight that. And I think that a lot of people worry about being triggered in a group. So, can you share a little more? Like, how do you get to that place where you're like, that's inevitable for me too?
Yeah. How do I get to that place? I spend time in possibility on purpose. Like I will sit, like just gonna very like actionable things, but like I will sit with my spreadsheet and I will put in the numbers that I want to see and just like sit there for just a minute and like look at the numbers, look at them adding up. And then also in my spreadsheet, I have like a cash collected line and a cash created line just because obviously the cash created is bigger than the cash collected. And I just spend some time like just looking at that number. I also know I'm never giving up. I know I get better every single year. I know I can like look back, and I think also reflecting back to where I was last year or where I was 5 months ago and just reflecting on that growth, I think really helps me realize that it's just done. It's for sure done. I'm never giving up. Like that's just not an option. And I keep getting better. So to me, like that plus that equals it's done. Like there's just no other option for me.
Yeah,
So
I
I
think that
think
gives
those
so
things.
much confidence in your business, in like showing up and investing and going through hard times when you
Mhm.
have that perspective.
And other people do it. Like if they can do it, I can do it. We all have brains. Like if I keep investing and if I keep showing up and I keep doing the work, it's done. And I see that with, I think it's just like we're just so lucky to have all of these examples now of women making a lot of money,
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
money.
We're in this very weird little niche of like super wealthy women.
Yes. Yes. And it's the best thing ever. And I think about 5 years ago, like I mean, I can think of, like there's Brooke Castillo, but beyond that, 5 years ago, I don't know. And I don't even know back 5 years ago, she was making like, I don't even know if she was making a million 5 years ago.
I don't
I
think
don't
she
think she
was.
was, which is just astounding to think about really in the last, like, what, 2 or 3 years? It's like there's just been this explosion and it's only getting bigger. Like, I
Yeah.
never think that the market is oversaturated. I've literally never had that thought around the coaching world. Never. I just, it's just not something that's ever occurred to me. I just think the wealthier other people in the coaching world get, the wealthier I get. Like, I just think like it just expands. I
Yeah.
just think
And I
more is
think like
more.
online business in general is
Yes.
just growing so much and more people are on the internet every day. And the more people who make money on the internet, the more they're paying other people on the internet. And it is just kind of where the economy is shifting into the online space and being much more global. So it's very exciting to be a part of and to see the explosion, like you said.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point about just not just coaching, but online businesses in general. Like this is where things are shifting. Like I just saw, I don't even remember where I saw that, where it's like 80% of the workforce or 70% of the workforce is considering quitting their job.
Yeah.
Like that is a mind blowing number. And I don't know where they're going, but I would imagine probably in some version of the online world. And I just think that is just so normalized now in terms of like online services or, all of those types of things. It's just so normal and so accepted in just where things are going.
Yep. I think there's never been an easier time to get in. So, yeah, I love it. Okay, let's talk about the client and coach roles and responsibilities because this was a huge aha that you had in the mastermind. So, why don't you share a little bit about that breakthrough?
Okay. So it actually started even before the mastermind, I think. Yeah, it had to. I think I heard you on a podcast or like I think on your podcast where you talked about turning 2K into 100K because you're like you said something like I could have done it on my own, but like something about like responsibility and how you just like squeeze every bit out of that 2K. And oh, I think it was on your podcast about over investing, I think. Maybe. And that's when I first realized I was an over investor. I was just throwing money at the problem. And I would get these, what I call like belief bumps anytime I would invest in a program. So I would kind of have a rise up in my income, but then it would drop back down at the next month. And so, of course, that kept me in this perpetual cycle of just investing, investing, investing. And then I heard you say that. I was like, oh my gosh, I believe I can't do this on my own. I was like, what is she talking about? Do it on your own? Like foreign concept. But it was such a weird thing because in every other aspect of my life, I'm very much like take charge, do it on my own, figure it out no matter what. And it just really exposed that gap in my belief in terms of what I think I was capable of creating on my own in my business. I was just very much feeling like I didn't know what I was doing and I needed other people. And so that was a huge light bulb for me. And that's when I really started to shift into responsibility and see where I wasn't feeling responsible or taking responsibility for my own business and where I was kind of outsourcing it to my coaches.
I think there's kind of like this balance when we invest of like not wanting to underinvest like I did, where it was like, I'm going to invest the bare minimum and get the maximum. But like also this, like, I don't want to just try to solve the problem with spending all the time and not see my role in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think once you came into the mastermind, like you continued to kind of like process that idea and then really figure out like how you wanted to look at our relationship as far as like who creates your results in it and like what each of our roles are. So what was that in the mastermind that came up for you? I don't remember what triggered that.
What's coming up, like I don't remember exactly like what triggered that in the mastermind, but I think it was like I needed to have that shift of like swinging all the way to the other direction of like what would be my mindset if I were under investing. I think that's kind of where the magic is. Like if you're an over investor, you kind of need to swing to the opposite direction, but while continuing to invest like the way that you want to, if that makes sense. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think the marriage between those two is where the magic is at. Is like I take full responsibility as if like it's no one else's job to get this result other than myself, which is true. At the end of the day, that is true. And but also invest in the things that you think will help get you there or the coach that can help get you there. I think that's just kind of where the magic is having those kind of mindsets together. And it is like that middle ground is full responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just my job to
Yeah.
coach myself when I'm not with you. It's my job to bring up the things that I can't coach myself through, or even just like brain dump, like, listen, I don't know what the problem is, but this is where I'm stuck. Please help.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that so much because I think a lot of times with investing, there's this expectation like this other person is going to create the result for me, or like my responsibility stops when I've paid the money. And that's like when your responsibility starts. Like you pay the money and then you show up and you implement. And I used to really struggle like on the coach side, not the client side. I used to struggle as a coach thinking that I was responsible for my clients' results. And it had me like trying to micromanage and that kind of thing and like spiral out around client results. And my coach at the time asked me, where do you fit in their model? Like in the self coaching model, what is the line that you are in as the coach? And I realized I had been trying to like have strings on all of their lines of their model. And I was like the puppet master, like controlling all of their thoughts, controlling all their feelings and all their actions so that they can get this result. And I realized like I'm only the circumstance that they are having thoughts about. And in that moment, I was able to shift into thinking, okay, how can I be the best circumstance possible? So, how can I give them all of the thoughts? How can I give them all of the like actions that they need to take? How can I provide coaching or tools to help them follow through on all of that? Like when I realized like, oh, this is my role, I actually started showing up so much better as a coach because I actually understood where I fit in. And when I have clients who come to the table, like you, also taking full responsibility to create their results, like that's when you create those crazy growth stories. That's when the success takes off because we are both all in on your results.
Yes. And what you were saying, it just triggered. I think this is probably what you were talking about at the beginning. The two shifts that I had, I was like, oh, yeah, that's what it was. Is the first one is I used to think that just simply investing created my transformation. It was like the opposite of what you said of like, my job is to invest and that's where I get the shift. No, that is not
you
how
get
it
a
works.
shift there.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of
Yes.
many.
Yes. And then the other one is I used to think that my coach could somehow like see inside my brain, like see my whole brain laid out and like see where I was keeping myself stuck. And that is not, sadly, how it works. Like it's my job as the client to find those stuck places and coach myself on them and or bring them to you to get coaching on to get over them. Like I think those two shifts made a huge difference, is realizing like that was my responsibility to find out where I was stuck.
Yeah.
And it's not, and I can help getting unstuck with you, but I need to show up and do my part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I
can't
think,
know.
right. I think, like you said, those moments where you show up and you're like, hey, I don't even know what's going on, but this is the struggle. Help. Like that mess, like showing up as a mess is part of this. Like that vulnerability and willingness is so part of this.
Yeah.
So good. I think everybody who is thinking about Mama to CEO, thinking about the mastermind, like this is the mentality that you want to be in when you're coming into these spaces, into these rooms. Like this is how the magic is going to happen. And so much of this I teach. Like I teach you how to find where you're stuck. I teach you how to show up. I make it as easy as possible. Like whether you're an introvert or an extrovert or a mix, like to have a comfortable way to seek help. And like that's kind of like me thinking through, how do I make it so easy for them to follow through and get that result? So good. All right. Yeah. Any last thoughts that you want to share?
I would just say put yourself in the room before you're ready. Whether that's Mama to CEO, whether that's the mastermind, just don't wait to be ready. Put yourself in the room where people are doing the things that you want to do. That is how you get there. And don't expect to feel don't expect to feel great. Like it's going to feel uncomfortable. That's the point. You're doing something new, but like that's where the growth starts. That's where your growth is. And hire Samantha, best decision of all time.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for that sales pitch. So where can people find you if they want your help with time?
Yeah, so I hang out mostly on Instagram at Greta, Gretta_Scholten, Scholten.
Perfect. They will look you up and hire you. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was so fun. I feel like we just gave them like the roadmap to being successful in a group program of any kind. So thank you so much for your willingness, your time, and being such a great client.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
If you like this podcast, I want to invite you to coach with me over in my program, Mama to CEO. There's you, and there's the consistent income you want to make in your business, and I help you remove everything standing in between. It's lifetime access for mastering your marketing, sales, time, and everything else you need to have the business and life you really want. Whether it's making your first 1,000 or 100,000, I can help you do it. To join, go to mamatoceo.com, mamatoceo.com.